Hi, welcome back. When we last left off in chapter 8, we learned that Ben made a very big mistake. He wanted to look into the cage and he wanted to see what kind of snakes were in the cage. And in the process of trying to see what kind of snakes were in the cage, he accidentally let two poisonous snakes out of the cage. So we'll have to read to find out what happens next. Does Mrs. Tibbets find out? Is she mad at Ben? Does someone get bitten or hurt by the poisonous snakes? We'll have to read now and find out what happens. Are you ready? Here we go. Chapter 9. The next day in class, Ben can hardly look up at Mrs. Tibbets. He slumps down in his seat, thinking about the snakes. He knows that snakes don't ordinarily strike people, at least if people leave them alone. But he can't help picturing them gliding out of the cage, lurking in the garden, ready to strike out if someone passes. Someone like Mrs. Tibbets. He sits up straight and tries to concentrate on the class discussion. But he can't get those two triangular heads out of his mind. And when Ben gets home, he has a snack and then goes to his room and shuts the door. He doesn't know what else to do but work on his homework. He stares at his geography assignment. An outline of the report is due tomorrow. But Ben hasn't even been able to get started on it. Now it's the last thing that he wants to do. The desert seems a million miles away. The phone rings. Ben runs down the hall and answers it. Ben, this is Mrs. Tibbets. Ben is too stunned to speak. He stares at the wall. Ben? Oh, right. Hi? I need to ask you something. Okay. Ben's heart is racing. When you came by yesterday afternoon, did you notice anything about the cage behind my garage? What? Ben is fighting for time. The cage behind my garage, the one under the lean-to. Now Ben's mind's racing. He knows that he should confess, but he just can't. No, I didn't notice anything. Well, someone apparently opened the cage and then fastened it shut again. She stops talking for a moment, leaving space for him to say something if he wants to. Ben, the snakes in that cage are dangerous. And somehow they got out. Wow. Ben's voice is barely above a whisper. He feels terrible about the lie, but he can't bring himself to explain everything to her. What kind of snakes were they? He asks. Rattlesnakes, timber rattlers. That's why I asked you to stay away from them. Rattlesnakes? Ben tries to sound surprised. Yes, and I thought maybe you were looking at them when you were here. No, says Ben. Oh, this is horrible. Oh, I shouldn't have kept them. Where did you get them? Ben tries to sound like he's just interested and doesn't know anything about them. They're very rare around here, Mrs. Tibbets says. My husband was licensed to capture and move snakes that had lost their habitat. And he was going to transfer those rattlers. And then she pauses for a minute. And Ben knows she's thinking about her husband dying. She takes a breath and goes on. I should have done something with them. And now, who knows what happened? Maybe there was a hole in the cage. They got out somehow. Maybe someone stole them, Ben says. It's hard to imagine. No one knew that they were there. Oh, what have I done? You didn't do anything, Ben says. Yes, I did. I kept them, and I shouldn't have. Will they be all right? I don't know. The teacher's voice sounds so sad that Ben's throat tightens. It's too early in the year for them to be out, and they usually can't adapt to a new habitat. This is all my fault. Maybe they'll be okay, Ben says, trying to cheer her up. And himself. Thanks. And then before Ben can hang up, she asks, Is your mother there? Ben freezes. Why does she want my mom? Yeah, he stammers. May I speak with her? Ben feels sick. Sure, just a minute. He calls his mom. Who is it? She asks. It's Mrs. Tibbets. He hands the phone and walks away, but as soon as he is around the corner, he stops and listens. His mother says hello and then falls silent. She's quiet for a long time. He sticks his head around the corner and sees her just standing there with the phone to her ear. Are you sure? She says. And then after a pause, she talks for a while, saying how much Ben has always liked the outdoors and wild things and how she appreciates Mrs. Tibbet's concern. And then she hangs up and sees Ben watching. I wish you had told us about those snakes, she says. Ben nods. If his mom asks him whether he let them out, he knows that he'll have to tell her the truth. Well, she says, I'm relieved that you didn't have anything to do with it. She sounded very upset. His mother heads back into the kitchen. Ben just stands there. He's missed the chance to let the truth come out. Sinking deeper and deeper into a hole, he feels worse than ever. He goes back to his desk and stares at the blank wall. The desert is 2 million miles away. And when he closes his eyes, he just sees the snakes. He wonders where they are tonight. Ben does his best to avoid Miss Tibbets in school that week and the next. And when he sees her in class, he does his work, but he doesn't raise his hand. And twice she asked him after class if he managed to catch a peeper or if he wants to come and check on the pool again. And both times he shakes his head and hurries out of the room. It's not like he's lost interest in the toads, though. He spends a lot of time in the woods behind his house. His parents must notice because one day his father comes home with a new pair of waders. This is to save your sneakers, he says. And they fit him better than the ones that he used at Mrs. Tibbet's house, and he likes the feeling of being waterproof. Using the net that Mrs. Tibbets gave him, Ben snares a few American toads, but he still doesn't manage to catch another peeper. He decides to keep one of the toads, and with the money he's saved, he buys a terrarium from the pet store. After fixing it up with some mud and a couple of plants, Ben settles the toad in its new habitat. The following Thursday afternoon, Ben is sitting at his desk at home, trying to get started on his geography project. His mom has laid down the law. No more wandering into the woods until he's made progress on his report. His sister is always playing with Ryan's sister. The house is quiet. He has no excuse for putting this off any longer. He stares at the report guidelines. He picks up a pencil, taps his notebook. He loves the desert. Why can't he get started on this report? Frustrated, he looks around the room until his gaze comes to rest on a book about amphibians that he brought home from the school library. He picks it up and starts leafing through it. He glances over at the terrarium. The toad is crouched in the corner. It doesn't look happy. 4 glass walls and some dirt and plants don't make much of a home for something that's used to living outside in the wild. He skims through the section of the book on building a terrarium for amphibians, looking for ideas. And just then the doorbell rings. "I'll get it," he yells, slamming the book shut. He runs down the hallway to the front door, happy for an excuse to escape his homework. He opens the door and finds his sister, Agatha, standing there. And Ryan is just behind her, holding a book in his hands. "The door was locked, you bozo," Agatha says as she shoves past him. "It was not. Try turning the knob for once." Ben turns to Ryan. "Hi," he says. "Hi," Ryan says. "Mom and Rory are waiting in the car, so I can't stay. I brought your book back. And when I was at the library, I found these books about amphibians and reptiles too. I thought you might want to see them." He's so excited that he practically throws the books at Ben and they fall on the floor between them. Whoops! And he scrambles to pick them up. "I took them out on my library card, and my mom said we could bring them over. You can give them back to me when you're done." Ben helps Ryan with the books, and Ryan just keeps talking. "They're not as cool as your book. Your book was the best. I've read some of the chapters twice already, and..." Ryan's mother honks the horn and waves for Ryan to hurry. "Sorry, gotta go." "Thanks," Ben says. Ryan smiles his loopy smile. "See you tomorrow," he says. And on the way to the car, he turns back and calls out, "Oh, yeah, I put a picture I drew in one of the books. It's for you." "Okay," Ben says. He waves goodbye as Ryan's mom backs the car out of the driveway. Ben looks down at the stack of books in his arms. Standing in the doorway with the door open, he opens the top book. And between the first 2 pages is a colored pencil drawing. It's beautiful. Much better than anything Ben's ever done. He didn't even know Ryan could draw. It's a picture of a bright orange creature perched on a rock by a stream, and above it, Ryan has written in large block letters, "Golden toad, endangered or extinct, handle with care." And underneath the picture of the toad, Ryan has written an inscription. "For Ben, your friend, Ryan." Ben's embarrassed. He hasn't done anything to deserve Ryan's friendship. He's barely even talked to him. He takes the books to his room. He searches through his desk drawer for the tape dispenser and sticks Ryan's picture on the wall above his desk. And then he sits at the desks and looks at the library books that Ryan brought. He opens the biggest book first, the one with the glossy color photograph of a bright red frog on the cover. He thumbs through it, looking at all the different species of frogs and toads, and then he stops on a page and stares at a photograph of a small, smooth-skinned olive green toad. 2 yellow stripes curve across its back. Its eyes are bright. The edges of the eye are golden and the pupils are vertical up and down, not horizontal like other toads. And a diagram shows the projection of its hind feet. They look like little shovels. He reads the caption. Eastern Spadefoot, now rare and endangered in several states. It's the toad Miss Tibbets told him about. The kind appears every year in her bowl. Compared to some of the other species in the book, it doesn't look like much. But Mrs. Tibbets had made it sound like a treasure, like a special secret that only the 2 of them know about. An endangered species right around the corner from where he lives? Ben thinks about the toads out there, buried way under the ground, waiting for the rain. He'd love to see them when they come out for that one night. But that would mean talking to Miss Tibbets, and that's something he can't imagine doing. Not after what happened with the snakes. His guilt silts in the pit of his stomach like a big cold stone. He reads all there is about the Spadefoot, and it only makes him feel worse. Ben, his mother called, it's time for dinner. He looks at the Spadefoot one more time and then closes the book. He'll have to work on the report later. Wow. So Mrs. Tibbets does not know that it was Ben that let the snakes out. And Ben has this guilt just eating away inside of him because he knows that it was wrong. And then he also has some guilt because for some reason, Ryan desperately wants to be his friend. And Ryan has checked some books out of the library for him. And Ryan's even made a really cool drawing for him, just desperately wanting to be his friend. And Ben feels kind of bad because he knows deep down inside he hasn't really been very friendly and nice to Ryan back. So lots of things for him to feel guilty about. I wonder if his relationship with Ryan is going to change. Is he going to be a little nicer to him? But I'm really wondering, is he going to confess to Mrs. Tibbets that he let the snakes out? And will he ever see the Spadefoot toad? We'll have to read some more next time. Bye.